Attention gamers. League of Legends has a huge problem with their game that revolves around ADCs, and the best way for me to explain it is to talk about the lousy TV show Umbrella Academy. The plot of this director's acid trip baby involves like 50 women who weren't pregnant that randomly had babies out of nowhere. Some rich billionaire sees this and figured they have mutant superpowers and adopts these kids. Turns out they do have powers. One is so lethal with knife throwing you'd think he competed for Turkey in the Olympics, while another one looks like he is overdosing on tren. They can teleport and mind control people, you name it. But then there's Vanya. Vanya is a normie, the degenerate black sheep of the family who is weak and has no powers. She lives her whole life in the shadows of her superhero siblings and just sucks at everything. Psych plot twist: Vanya is the strongest of them all, but she's too strong that rich bitch daddy Riot can't balance her, so he threw her in a cage as a girl, pumped her up with pills and convinced her that she had no powers her whole life because he was just too lazy to balance her. Long story short, she discovers her powers and blows up the world. Sorry for the spoilers, but not really, it's a terrible show. But all of that to say that Vanya is the ADC in this example, and the bot lane with duo lane shaft your nuts terrible XP, and a support in your face is the cage and the pills that are being used to convince you that you aren't the strongest thing on the rift. But now if you can break away from rich daddy Riot, who knows they messed up, and try to brainwash you into thinking you belong in the bot lane because they can't control your powers, you will soon see the problem. Which is precisely why Tristana was picked in 112% of pro games last year, and despite the countless nerfs this problem will never be fixed because ADCs are Vanya, and today I'm going to show a few games where I play ADCs in solo lanes to show this power. But all this movie talk has me hungry, so I'd like to play Factor.
No, we're not playing Have You Met?
Factor is the best meal delivery system on the planet for lazy gamers who want to have the body of ambitious bodybuilders without having to buy groceries or cook or do dishes. Simply put, Factor is an easy-to-use website where you select types of meal plans you'd like to be on and how many easy, fresh, never frozen meals you want per week, with options to customize your selections, and bam! Rumor is billions of chefs get hired on the spot to cook up exactly what you wanted and then hand deliver these meals straight to your doorstep. The meals are all designed to be beamed up and ready to eat within 2 minutes, and they have some of the highest ratings in terms of taste and macronutrients to give you the convenience and satisfaction to stick to a healthy meal plan. I save a lot of time and reduce a lot of fat cells by using them, and you can too by using my link below to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month of orders. So thank them for sponsoring my content, and let's get into the games. Alright, so game 1, I was playing the nepotism hire at the Piltover Police Department in the mid lane against Riot's newest flavor of utter bullshit when I receive a gank from, get this, a Gnar jungler, his contribution being to deep throat 2 tower shots, give her hope, and then pole vault off of her dying head to just fit the stereotype of your typical solo queue teammate. Then we are just enjoying some alone time together as I give her a little ass tap from the other dimension, which has her looking like a prime recipient of an ace up her a-hole, but I underestimated the tankiness of those tits, which meant this mall cop had a blue hue in her ballsack. That said, I just knew that greedy ginger would stick around, and I had a plan for when she did. So I was enjoying being on the offensive in a game of bully the bitch thus far into the game, until she used what I assume is her ult to turn mid lane into a 5-gum commercial that I can't escape, but thanks to a bitch bubble I win the encounter, which leaves me thinking there's actually not a single thing on the rift that can stop me. I continue trying to figure out from context clues what this bitchy witch does, because I'm too lazy to look it up when I receive word that the prepubescent rat is en route as I do all the work, and he parkours in to surprisingly do the last little chunk of her health that I needed to kneel down and JFK the hoe. This lets me take an easy first tower before having to rotate over to the river rendezvous, where I hope their dragonfly wouldn't make a better door than a window, but turns out he made just a fine dead bitch. And then while we chase the rabbit, the girl in the rabbit hat chased us until I took a look at her and was like, I know you are socially awkward or some shit in the lore, but read the room, it's 2 to 1, I mean take the hint. But she was all like, I'm so sloppy with the hoppy, only to come in and eat a few more airsoft pellets until pissing off. At this point I decided to show what an ADC is capable of when she plays mid and isn't giga underleveled at the mid game, and the results consisted of me 3-shotting a blood bride with just auto attacks. This did attract the attention of literally their entire team, but I swatted the fly before the recording cut out for a second, but I did survive. Now anytime I saw enemies I would just toss an ult in the oven, knowing that even if it came out half-baked I could just wait a bit and get some credit for cooking, and then I passively participated in our Gnar jungler's ambitious goals of taking a dragon in front of their whole team. Well, almost their whole team. But when he inevitably learned that they won't just let him do that, I was there to pick up the scraps before lining up a snipey cuck into Q combo for the triple, and that I guess was enough for the enemy team to say okay, time for some Hello Kitty Island instead of this shit, and game 1 was in the books. I then decided to play She Who Has Been Nerfed More Than, a playful gun company marketed towards kids to prove that there's no amount of hot fixes that can fix the terror of taking her mid. And what I didn't notice was one of those self-driving zombie show on the map, because I was watching TikToks, but after a few pings that I thought were asking for a leash later, and I was down to be a homie. Until my jungler flat out ignored the camp, which colored me confused. That is, until their mid got a bit territorial, and suddenly it all made sense when I learned that BDSM bitch was digging through our panty drawers before the game. It was looking bad, but turns out level 1s haven't learned how to toggle off self-driving, and I was the beneficiary of that nonsense. My mid lane matchup was boring as shit because she would just hide in a smoky donut every time I wanted to play, so I resorted to traveling the world and looking for the chick who is just permanently tied to a headboard like she forgot her safe word, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let up when I saw her either. My own jungler was going through great lengths to make sure the enemy team had no idea where he was in his clear path, but it turns out both teams' cards were on the table when possessed Penelope showed up and a little double date commenced. We won the round by decision, even though a few seconds later there was apparently a proper knockout off camera. I was constantly more pushed up than an OF model's tits, which meant little pervy creeps would be showing up to hang out, but luckily I knew about a jungle camp heist that was going down in the neighborhood, so I baited like a master. Some may call me the master baiter, which landed Professor Akali in a situation where he himself got clickbaited, and then we casually took our victory lap by right-clicking the cuck who flashed out of danger only to dash right back in and die. At that point I figured she was a little stupid, but then she took to all chat to actually prove it, as she said I was giving up so much to help my jungler, which was an odd statement considering I had double the farm of their mid laner with 3 kills and 2 assists to her 1 death, and the last I checked, if I was ever giving anything up, it was much less than the sack of 300 gold just up for the taking every time I ran into this all chat bitching Briar. She was starting to get emotional in her gameplay, you know, a pure silver player situation, and it was a bad look for her. But speaking of silver, just a minute later I made one tiny mistake and suffered my first death, which I guess was enough to prompt the most dramatic fucking 15-minute forfeit vote that I'm still shocked actually went through. But this video isn't about FF culture and how it's ruining the game. It's about another unfixable problem that Riot has to deal with, which is ADCs learning that they are Vanya from the Umbrella Academy and sticking it to the man, or Maroon Sardine in this case, as the next game I got in a level 3 slap battle with the stabbing salmon, which could have gone either way, but I ended up with a solo bolo. I wanted to prove that even assassins can't stop this from happening, as Fizzy Poo did try, but I had a good Samaritan in the area just waiting to get his omega-3s for the day. I was absolutely bullying their mid laner, taking plates in front of their face and tickling them every time they so even looked at my minions. Their jungler would try to turn the lights off and stick things in my ass, but I would just decline the ambitious offer, but the perv just would not let it rest. Turns out him wasting so much time mid put him a bit behind, so he paid that price, and right when I was glad to just get into another mid game where I would snowball for the video, the enemy team participated in the int and evacuate epidemic that makes playing League feel like such a waste of time lately when you can't even get a full game. But I was committed to showing the power of ADCs, so in game 4 I chose a less conventional pick and went for some solo lane powder action. The pattern of the enemy jungler having a crush on me and giving me attention in a way that's creepy because they aren't a blue-eyed 6'5" guy in finance continued, so I became quite comfortable with getting catcalled, no pun intended, and I figured at a certain point the outcomes of her never-ending visits would eventually prompt some level of pattern recognition and she would just fuck off. But unfortunately, when she wasn't visiting, Karma was in town, and Karma is a bitch. So eventually I decided to give her a taste of her own medicine and show her what it feels like for guests to show up unexpectedly, and I even invited Ellen DeGeneres to say some annoying shit at her from the opposite side to teach her a lesson. This, I guess, just created an open door policy in my lane where everyone was all of a sudden okay with just showing up unannounced, but I'm an introvert, so I just whipped out an Omega Death rocket to deal with them so I didn't have to myself. And then when I found out my own jungler would finally be coming in for a visit, I said, okay, you distract her and I will fire a hot potato at where I think she will be, and the whole thing worked like a charm, which ended up getting us another kill. So at this point I figured I would show the lane dominance of a properly leveled ADC by just running at a mage who can't one-shot me yet and showing that my right clicks are much more effective than her having to wait for cooldowns because the supply chain of my damage is on Chick-fil-A levels here and that my friends is a solo bolo. We get an uncontested dragon because the mid gap is wider than Riley Reid's bank account because she's a wise business person obviously, but anyways I use one smiling nuke to fetch me a bit of that kill cocaine high, which is then used efficiently to catch up to and clobber dead bitch numero 2. Then I stick around because ever since I made that video where I reverse smurfed in Challenger as a silver player and got so much hate because I apparently played even worse than a silver player, I'd like to redeem myself by showing just an impressive amount of game sense with this guess. Then it's back to mid with my own team's ADC, who you can see is literally 3 levels behind me because he is still drinking Riot's Kool-Aid telling him he sucks and should be suppressed down there while I'm living my best life firing Mario Kart power-ups at half-dead enemies. The enemy mid can't stand a chance as I have consistent damage and range and levels and just fat amounts of, you guessed it, the enemy FFing before I can even get a goddamn game. So with that, try ADCs in solo lanes if you want to learn about their real power, and let's ignore the fact that I played 18 games for this video and couldn't get a single one to last for over 20 minutes. Brush your teeth tonight. Rav out.